grease, gears, and a bluesy tune. Fitzwilliam fought a rusted bolt, the wrench a brutal instrument against his flesh. A grunt escaped him, sweat beading on his balding crown. The 57 Bel Air's engine block was proving a formidable adversary. He scrubbed his hands with a grease-stained rag, leaving a charcoal streak on his face. A low, mournful blues riff, inherited from his grandfather, hummed from his lips as he paused, surveying his domain of disorder. Fitzwilliam's garage was a study in decay. The corrugated roof sagged under the weight of years, a patchwork of ill-fitting metal sheets that trembled with the slightest breeze. Flaking paint revealed a palimpsest of forgotten hues, blues and greens left by preceding, equally unsuccessful tenants. Inside, tools were scattered across pegboards in no discernible order. Gaps where some were missing, others replaced by improper matches. Detritus of past automotive lives littered the space, carburetors balanced precariously on overturned pails. Crumpled fenders lounging against tire stacks. A Medusa's coil of wires draped over the gritty floor. Sunlight pierced the cracks in the walls, painting the air with dancing dust motes, each a miniature chronicle of the garage's arduous history. The blues faded as a figure caught his eye. Curled up on the curb across the street, a girl nestled between a fire hydrant and a struggling rosebush. Drowned in a jacket too large for her frame, she was small. Her head was bowed. Her shoulders trembled with silent sobs. Her face was hidden, but her posture telegraphed distress. He watched, wrench suspended in midair. He recognized that pose. He'd worn it himself far too often. Hesitation snagged him. He wasn't built for people, least of all girls haunted by some unseen grief. He was more at home with pistons, gaskets, the reliable logic of mechanical breakdown. Yet, the sight of her, so minuscule and forlorn, struck a chord. A sigh escaped him like the hiss of escaping pressure. He dropped the wrench onto the workbench with a resonant clang and wiped his hands, leaving only a faint smudge this time. Retrieving a bottle of tepid water from the battered mini-fridge, he crossed the asphalt. Drawing closer, he discerned quiet sobs muffled by the denim. He halted a few feet away, grappling for words. "Hey!" he rumbled, his voice gravelly from lack of use. "You okay?" She recoiled at his voice, her head shooting up. Red-rimmed eyes, swollen with tears, widened in alarm. She resembled a frightened doe, poised for flight. He froze, offering the water. I don't need anything," she breathed, her voice a mere thread. He simply extended the bottle, the gesture clumsy but earnest. "It's just water. There's a scorcher out here." Her gaze flickered to the bottle, then back to him, her expression a fragile blend of suspicion and, perhaps, a glimmer of hope. Slowly, tentatively, she reached out and accepted it. Tears and a secret. The wrench slipped in Fitzwilliam's greasy hand, clattering against the engine block with a dull thud. He glanced up, the setting sun glinting off his safety glasses. Lily was still there, perched on the upturned milk crate near the back of the garage, her shoulders hunched. She hadn't moved in almost an hour. He wiped his hands on a rag, the familiar scent of oil and metal doing little to soothe the nagging worry in his gut. He grabbed a carton of milk from the small refrigerator tucked in the corner, the glass cold against his palm. "Hey, Lily," he said softly, approaching her. "Want some milk? It's the good stuff from Farmer McGregor's." She didn't look up, but he saw a single tear trace a path down her cheek. Her small hands were clenched in her lap. He knelt beside her, offering the carton. "Something wrong?" She shook her head, her dark hair swaying like a curtain. "Just thinking." Fitzwilliam knew a lie when he heard one, especially from kids. He gently nudged the milk toward her. "Thinking about what? School? That stray kitten Mrs. Henderson found." She took the carton, her fingers brushing his. "Nothing important." Her voice was small, barely a whisper. She popped the top and took a tentative sip, her eyes still downcast. He waited, letting the silence stretch between them, punctuated only by the chirping of crickets in the nearby field. He knew pushing her would only make her clam up tighter. Finally, she spoke, her voice thick with unshed tears. "It's just, sometimes things aren't fair." Fitzwilliam frowned. That was vague, even for a kid trying to hide something. "No, they aren't," he agreed. "Want to tell me what's not fair?" She shook her head again, more emphatically this time. "No. It's okay. Really." She took a larger gulp of milk, some of it dribbling down her chin. She wiped it away with the back of her hand. He noticed then that she was shivering. The evening air was cooling rapidly, and she was only wearing a thin t-shirt. "Here," he said, standing up. "Let's get you a jacket." He rummaged through a box of discarded clothes in the corner, pulling out a faded blue denim jacket. It was a little big, but it would keep her warm. As he turned back to her, he noticed the way she was clutching the front of her t-shirt, her knuckles white. He moved closer, concern etched on his face. "Lily, are you sure you're all right? You're shaking." She pulled the jacket around herself, avoiding his gaze. "I'm fine," she insisted, her voice trembling. But Fitzwilliam saw something else, a flicker of panic in her eyes, a desperate attempt to conceal something hidden beneath the fabric of her shirt. The kitten under the jacket. Fitzwilliam cleared his throat, the metallic tang of oil still clinging to the air around him. "Lily, sweetheart, you look uncomfortable." He gestured vaguely at the bulky jacket she was still clutching around herself despite the garage's stuffy warmth. "Are you feeling all right?" She shifted, her eyes darting around the cluttered space, avoiding his gaze. A faint, high-pitched sound, almost like a bird's peep, escaped from within the folds of the denim. Fitzwilliam frowned, tilting his head. I'm fine, Mr. Fitzwilliam. Just a little chilly." Her voice was barely a whisper. He moved closer, his shadow falling over her. "Chilly? In here?" Even Bessie's radiating heat after that tune-up. Tears welled up in her eyes, shimmering like tiny prisms. The faint peeping sound came again, louder this time, followed by a soft scrabbling. Fitzwilliam's brow furrowed. Is that an animal?" Lily's lower lip trembled. Slowly, reluctantly, she began to unbutton the jacket. The movement was agonizingly slow, each button a tiny act of surrender. The air crackled with a strange tension. Finally, the jacket fell open, revealing a tiny ball of fluff nestled against her chest. It was a kitten, no bigger than his hand, its fur a patchwork of black and white, its eyes squeezed shut. It shivered violently. "Oh, Lily," Fitzwilliam breathed, his voice filled with surprise and a sudden rush of tenderness. She looked down at the kitten, her eyes overflowing. "I found him by the dumpster behind the bakery. He was all alone and it was raining. I couldn't just leave him there." Her voice broke. He was crying. Fitzwilliam knelt beside her, gently stroking the kitten's back with one finger. Its fur was damp and thin. "You did the right thing, Lily. But why didn't you tell me?" "I was scared," she whispered. "Scared you'd make me take him back. Scared you'd be mad." He shook his head, his heart aching for the little girl and the tiny creature she was trying to protect. "Mad? Lily, I'm just glad you trusted me enough to show me." He looked at the kitten, then back at Lily, his expression softening. "We'll figure something out. Together." Patch's story. Lily stroked the small black and white kitten, its purr a tiny motor vibrating against her palm. "His name is Patches," she said softly, as if sharing a secret. "I found him in a box." Fitzwilliam leaned against the greasy counter, the wrench he'd been using forgotten. He watched her, his usual gruffness softened by something he couldn't quite name. Someone had left him by the dumpster behind the bakery. It was raining and he was just shivering. There were other kittens, but... Her voice cracked and she looked down at Patches, burying her face in his fur. They were all gone. Fitzwilliam's throat tightened. He remembered the alley behind his own childhood home, the constant scurry of rats, the gnawing emptiness in his own stomach. He knew what it was like to be unwanted. "I couldn't just leave him there," Lily continued, her voice muffled. "So I brought him home. I cleaned him up and gave him some milk." She looked up at Fitzwilliam, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "He's been sleeping under my bed ever since." "And your parents?" Fitzwilliam asked gently. Lily sighed, a small, defeated sound. "They don't know. They have this rule. No pets. Ever. My dad says it's because of allergies, but I think they just don't want the responsibility." She paused, twisting a strand of Patch's fur around her finger. "They wouldn't understand." The garage suddenly felt smaller, the air thick with unspoken emotions. Fitzwilliam recognized the desperation in her voice, the fierce protectiveness she felt for the tiny creature in her arms. He saw a reflection of his own younger self, alone and yearning for connection. He remembered the stray dog he'd tried to keep hidden in the woods behind his house, feeding it scraps and whispering secrets to it until his father found out and, well, he didn't want to think about that now. "I can't keep him," Lily said, her voice barely a whisper. "They'll find out eventually and I don't know what I'll do." She looked at Fitzwilliam pleadingly, her eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. I just needed someone to know. Someone who would understand." Patches stretched, revealing a tiny pink tongue, and let out a contented meow. The sound echoed in the silence of the garage, a small, fragile plea for belonging. Fitzwilliam knew, looking at Lily's tear-streaked face and the tiny kitten nestled in her arms, that he couldn't just stand by and watch. He had to do something. A promise and a name. "We will find him a home, Lily," Fitzwilliam said, his voice surprisingly gentle. He knelt beside her, the gravel crunching softly under his weight. "A good home. I promise." Lily sniffled, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. The kitten, nestled against her chest, purred weakly. Fitzwilliam's words, though simple, were a balm to her raw emotions. She looked up at him, her dark eyes searching his. She saw sincerity there, a quiet strength that eased her worry. "Really?" she whispered. "Really," he confirmed, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. "Now let's get this little fella cleaned up, eh? He looks like he's been through a tumble dryer." The garage sink wasn't ideal, but it was the best they had. Fitzwilliam filled it with lukewarm water, adding a tiny squirt of dish soap. Lily held the kitten, supporting him carefully as Fitzwilliam gently bathed him. The kitten, initially hesitant, seemed to relish the warmth and the gentle scrubbing. Matted clumps of dirt and grime loosened, revealing patches of surprisingly soft, white fur amidst the black. "He's got spots," Lily exclaimed, pointing to a perfectly round white patch on the kitten's back. "And one on his nose, like a little star." "He does, doesn't he?" Fitzwilliam chuckled, carefully rinsing the soap from the kitten's fur. "Quite the patchwork kitty." Once dried with a soft rag, the kitten looked almost presentable. He lapped eagerly at a saucer of milk Fitzwilliam produced from somewhere in the back of the garage, his tiny pink tongue working furiously. Lily watched him, a genuine smile finally gracing her face. "He needs a name," she said, her voice filled with a newfound lightness. Fitzwilliam leaned against the workbench, considering. "Well, he certainly is patched together." Lily giggled. "Patches?" she suggested. "Patches," Fitzwilliam repeated, testing the sound of it. "Suits him perfectly. Patches it is." Patches, oblivious to his newfound identity, continued to devour his milk. Lily reached out and gently stroked his head. He paused, purring loudly, and rubbed against her hand. "Patches," she whispered, burying her face in his soft fur. Fitzwilliam watched them, a quiet satisfaction filling him. He knew finding a home for Patches wouldn't be easy, but seeing Lily's face, seeing the connection she already had with the little creature, made him even more determined to keep his promise. The garage, usually a place of grease and metal, felt a little warmer, a little brighter, with the presence of a girl and a kitten. The clatter of tools and the hiss of the air compressor were replaced by the soft purr of a grateful cat. Word travels fast. Fitzwilliam carefully dabbed at the scratch on Patch's tiny nose with a cotton ball soaked in antiseptic. The kitten, nestled in Lily's lap, barely flinched, purring like a miniature motor. Lily stroked his soft fur, her face a mask of gentle concern. "He's so brave," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. The garage, usually filled with the metallic clang of wrenches and the roar of engines, was quiet, save for the kitten's contented rumble. Fitzwilliam had cleared a space on his workbench, lining it with an old towel and a small cardboard box. Patches seemed to have claimed it as his own. "Almost done," Fitzwilliam said, his voice surprisingly soft. He finished applying a dab of ointment and stepped back. "There you go, little fella. Good as new." News, like oil stains on concrete, has a way of spreading. By lunchtime, half the businesses on Main Street knew about the orphaned kitten living at Fitzwilliam's garage. Maria from the bakery stopped by with a saucer of milk. Old Man Hemlock, who ran the hardware store, brought a bag of catnip toys, grumbling about being soft in his old age. Lily, emboldened by the outpouring of support, even crafted a small "Kitten Needs Home" sign, which she taped to the garage door. The afternoon sun was casting long shadows when a familiar figure approached. Mrs. Gable, her kind eyes crinkling at the corners, walked slowly towards the garage. Her floral dress swayed gently in the breeze. "Lily, dear," she greeted, her voice a soothing balm. "I heard about your little friend. May I see him?" Lily nodded, a hopeful gleam in her eyes. She led Mrs. Gable to the workbench where Patches was curled up, fast asleep. Mrs. Gable peered into the box, a soft smile gracing her lips. "He's precious," she murmured, her gaze lingering on the tiny, sleeping creature. She reached out a hand, her touch featherlight, and gently stroked Patches' back. The kitten stirred, blinked his eyes, and let out a tiny mew. Mrs. Gable looked up at Lily and Fitzwilliam, her eyes filled with a warmth that seemed to radiate outwards. "I've been thinking about getting a cat for some time now," she confessed, her voice barely above a whisper. "My old Thomas passed away last year, and the house has felt awfully empty since. He looks like he needs someone, and I believe I believe I need him too. Lily's breath hitched. Fitzwilliam, leaning against a wall, straightened up, a flicker of surprise crossing his features. Are you sure, Mrs. Gable? Lily asked, her voice trembling with a mixture of hope and disbelief. He needs a lot of love and care. Mrs. Gable chuckled, a warm, melodic sound. My dear, I have plenty of both to give. She looked back at the kitten, her eyes shining with affection. He looks like he'd be right at home with me. A heart full of hope and sadness. The cardboard box felt lighter now, a physical manifestation of the hollowness blooming in Lily's chest. Patches was gone. Mrs. Gable had left with him tucked safely in a carrier, promising to send pictures. Lily knew he was going to a good home, a warm home, a home where he would be loved and cherished. That knowledge should have been enough to fill her with joy, but instead, a persistent sadness clung to her like the damp chill of the evening air. She swiped at a stray tear tracing a path down her cheek. Fitzwilliam, ever observant, rested a hand on her shoulder. His touch was gentle, reassuring. He'll be all right, Lily. Mrs. Gable seems like a kind woman. I know, she sniffled, it's just. I'm going to miss him. The garage suddenly felt vast and empty without Patch's playful pounces and the comforting rumble of his purr. Fitzwilliam squeezed her shoulder lightly. Tell you what, he said, a twinkle in his eye. Why don't we ask Mrs. Gable if you can visit him? I'm sure she wouldn't mind. Lily's head shot up, hope flickering in her eyes like a newly lit candle. Really? Do you think she would? I don't see why not. You took such good care of him, she probably wants you to see how well he's settling in. Besides, he added with a wink, she seems to like your cookies. A small smile finally broke through Lily's gloom. The image of Patches curled up on a soft, plush bed, a far cry from the cold, damp alley, filled her with a warmth that chased away some of the sadness. The thought of seeing him again, of knowing for certain he was happy and healthy, was a powerful balm. Would you really ask her, Fitzwilliam? She asked, her voice thick with emotion. Of course, Lily. Anything for my best cookie baker. And, well, for a certain deserving kitten. He ruffled her hair playfully. Relief washed over Lily, so potent it nearly buckled her knees. It was a strange sensation, this simultaneous ache of loss and surge of gratitude. She threw her arms around Fitzwilliam, hugging him tightly. Thank you, she whispered, burying her face in his worn leather jacket. The familiar scent of oil and metal was unexpectedly comforting. Fitzwilliam chuckled, patting her back. All right. You'll smother me. Now, how about we get inside? I think I smell the remnants of those cookies calling my name. The garage door rumbled shut behind them, but this time the darkness felt less oppressive. The hope of seeing Patches again, the warmth of Fitzwilliam's kindness, filled the space left by the little kitten, easing the ache in her heart. It was still a heart full of sadness, but now it was also a heart full of hope. The gift and goodbye. Lily, brow furrowed in concentration, labored over the paper. A splash of scarlet here, a dab of azure there, her tongue peeked out with each careful stroke. From his tire throne, Fitzwilliam's tail provided a steady drumbeat to her efforts. The air, a peculiar blend of motor oil and wax crayons, was surprisingly homey. Almost there, she breathed, meticulously filling in Patches's ebony markings. She was determined to capture his sun-kissed fur, the impish spark in his eyes. Finally satisfied, she presented her artwork. Unrefined, admittedly, but brimming with affection. Patches, reborn in bold indigos, charcoals, and emeralds, cavorted across a field of sun-drenched yellow. Think she'll like it, Fitzwilliam? The cat responded with a languid blink, then a hop to the ground, weaving through her ankles. Lily took it as affirmation. A polite rap echoed from the open garage bay. Mrs. Gable stood framed in the doorway, her smile as radiant as the afternoon. An open carrier sat invitingly in her hands. Lily hugged the drawing protectively. He's ready, she murmured, her voice barely audible. As if on cue, Patches emerged from beneath a workbench, circling Lily's legs twice before cautiously approaching Mrs. Gable. He sniffed the carrier, then, reassured by Mrs. Gable's gentle coaxing, hopped inside. Kneeling, Lily held out the drawing. I made this. To remember him, even when he's napping. A sheen glazed Mrs. Gable's eyes. She accepted the gift reverently. This is just the sweetest thing, Lily. Thank you. She tucked it securely into her ample bag. I promise he'll be spoiled rotten, just like you spoiled him rotten. The carrier clicked closed. Mrs. Gable straightened, cradling it. Pictures will be sent, she vowed. Visits are always welcome. Lily could only nod, her throat constricted. Fitzwilliam, a furry anchor, rubbed against her. He's a lucky fellow, Mrs. Gable said, pausing at the garage entrance. You're a true friend, Lily. A final, tender smile, and she headed toward her car, the carrier swaying softly. They stood in the doorway, watching the retreating vehicle. The cherry-red car, carrying its precious passenger, dwindled to a speck before vanishing. A knot formed in Lily's throat, a bittersweet blend of sorrow and peace. Fitzwilliam butted her hand. She scooped him up, burying her face in his plush coat. "He'll be just fine, Fitzwilliam," she managed. Yet a solitary tear escaped, tracing a silent farewell down her cheek, a final adieu to the scruffy pup she'd rescued and cherished. Lasting bonds. The scent of motor oil and gasoline clung to the air as Lily tightened a bolt on an old carburetor. Fitzwilliam had shown her how to hold the wrench just so, how to apply the right amount of pressure without stripping the threads. Her fingers, usually stained with ink from her sketchbook, were now smudged with grease. She didn't mind. It felt good to be useful, to learn something new. "Almost got it," Fitzwilliam said, his voice a low rumble. "Just a little more. There you go." Lily beamed, wiping her forehead with the back of her hand, leaving a streak of grime. "I think I'm starting to get the hang of this." "You're a natural," Fitzwilliam chuckled, ruffling her hair. "Besides, anyone who can draw like you can figure out how an engine works." They worked in comfortable silence for a while, the rhythmic clang of metal on metal filling the garage. Lily found herself enjoying the focus, the tangible result of her efforts. It was a world away from the loneliness she often felt at school, a stark contrast to the sterile silence of her apartment. Later that afternoon, Lily and Fitzwilliam walked towards Mrs. Gable's house, a small basket swinging between them. Inside, nestled on a soft blanket, were Patch's favorite treats, tiny pieces of cooked chicken and a small vial of catnip. The air was thick with the scent of blooming honeysuckle as they approached the porch. Mrs. Gable greeted them with a warm smile, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "Patches has been waiting for you too. She knows when her friends are coming." They found Patches curled up on a sunny windowsill, her fur looking softer and healthier than it had just a few weeks ago. Lily gently stroked the cat's back, feeling the faint vibrations of her purr. "She's really thriving," Lily said, her voice filled with relief. "You're doing such a good job, Mrs. Gable." "It's easy to care for something so sweet," Mrs. Gable replied, her gaze softening as she watched Lily and Fitzwilliam interact with Patches. "And it's been wonderful having you two visit. Patches seems to come alive when you're here." Fitzwilliam offered Patches a piece of chicken, which she accepted with dainty bites. As he watched the cat eat, his expression was thoughtful. "It's funny," he said, almost to himself, "how something so small can make such a big difference." Lily knew he wasn't just talking about Patches. She understood the unspoken words, the shared understanding of how their small act of kindness had rippled outwards, creating a bond not just with a cat, but with each other and with Mrs. Gable. It was a connection that felt stronger than anything she'd ever known, a lifeline in a world that often felt cold and indifferent. She realized it wasn't just about saving Patches, it was about what Patches had given them, a purpose, a connection, and a lasting bond that promised to endure.